right, we're just about to go live. All right, we're live. You may begin whenever you're ready, Michael.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. Welcome, everybody, to the full design review board meeting of July 15th, 2025. I call us to order. We have a quorum at 5 members out of our only 6 current positions. We are looking for 3 more. So if you know any architects, landscape architects, urban planners, contact Cam Adams. He would love it. Those are my opening remarks. Do I hear a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
There's a motion by Emily. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Camelia. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, motion passes 5-0. Last meeting minutes, LaShonda, what do we got?
We have May 27th, June 3rd, June 10th, June 24th, July 1st, and July 8th.
All right. June 1st. All right, so a motion to pass May 27th, June 3rd, June 10th, June 24th, July 1st, and July 8th. Do I hear a motion?
Moved.
So we have a motion by Emily. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Samantha. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? All right, motion passes 5-0. Staff, just please let me know if Mike B jumps on, because there's a lot of people in the meeting, so I want to make sure I don't lose him if he does join. Now I'm looking for any general member comments that do not pertain to any of the agenda items tonight. If you do have such comments, please raise your hand virtually, and staff will try to grab you. I don't see anybody, so I think we are good to move into our agenda. Up first, we have an appeal, item F on the agenda, which is 2452 Freetown Drive.
Mike B is joining now.
Awesome, thank you. Is the appellant here?
I was not able to identify them. Please raise your hand, either virtually or on screen if you are the appellant for this case. 2452 Freetown.
I believe they're the iPad that was just led in the meeting.
This is Miles.
Hello, Miles. You're with 2452 Freetown Drive, correct?
Yes.
Welcome. So tonight you're appealing, I think, a panel decision. For appeals, you need to prove that there was a misapplied guideline or that there is new information at this time. And you have all the time you need to state your appeal. Brian and myself cannot vote on the appeal as we were part of the panel for this one. So Samantha, Emily, Camelia, and Mike B will be the only ones who can vote or make a motion on the appeal. All right, so Miles, take it away.
Well, there is another house on our street with a very similar fence that we have proposed. And we've also done a walk around the street just on Freetown, not on the side streets that interlock with it. But the guidelines are not followed by a majority of the fences that are built on the homes on our street. And so we are coming back to you and saying it's not unusual. We're not asking for anything out of the ordinary that's not already in our neighborhood.
So is this I'm assuming is the subject property that you're talking about that has a paddock style fence, correct?
Correct, yes.
And staff, were you guys able to confirm if this was approved or not?
Yes, this was approved.
Okay.
Can you clarify the question? You mean the one at 2464?
Correct.
Correct. That's
So,
Go ahead, Cam.
the question related to the fence. Yes, the fence style was approved, but there is additional information in the DRB's package that I think will be important as you review the specifics on the reason for the approval on this particular item.
It's us. So is that a question to me or
It was
Where-
clarification to the DRB.
I see.
All right. Okay, well, since I cannot participate in the kind of vote, let me go around and see if any of the other board members have some questions for you guys. And then
Sure.
we'll go from there. So from an appeal standpoint, Samantha, do you have any questions or comments or any questions for Brian or I?
I do a little bit confused. So the photo we are looking at is example of neighbor's fence,
Correct.
and it was approved by our board, and I found that it's still different than the cut sheet of what being proposed. Is that correct? So this, like right now, we see the photo is the one that the applicant wish to install for his, and they does not look the same. That's where I'm confused.
Yes, we believe it's similar and that neither of these styles are listed in the DRB guidelines, and they both have broad 1x6 inch boards. But the style that we propose does have, we would consider, straight boards if the cross at the top is unacceptable. If that makes sense.
It still feel largely different in terms of style, and also my understanding is you are wish to install the fences 60-inch tall, right? Or 6 foot tall, while our guideline is more in the range of 4 feet tall fence. So I want to get the clarification of this application still wants to have the same height of the fence.
So we were looking for a 5 foot tall fence,
Okay.
not a 6 foot tall fence.
Okay.
Now, we would note that a number of fences, including the board-on-board style privacy fence, exceed that 48 inches. We are trying to achieve something that is more open and welcoming than the board-on-board privacy fence. However, if that is, again, Reston's requirement that we have a privacy fence in a closed-off backyard, we would certainly consider that as well. My understanding was Reston was considering moving away from the board-on-board and privacy fences to engender a open atmosphere within the neighborhoods. So we are trying to adhere to that goal and ideal, while at the same time, trying to achieve something somewhat higher than 4 feet. Yes.
I think I have my question answered.
Okay.
Yeah, and generally, I do not see any additional information or misapply the guideline in this application.
Okay. Emily, do you have any questions, comments, questions for Brian or I?
I guess talking about whether or not we're going to look at this as an appeal, was it new information to you all that this was a pre-existing approved style within the neighborhood, that there were other homes that met like 2464 had this 3 board paddock style fence. Was that new? Is that new information for you guys, or did you have that prior to the review?
Yeah. Brian, you can answer, or I can answer.
I do not remember this being part of the original application, this example project.
Yeah, this one was not. So this is new information that there is a paddock style fence in the neighborhood, but they're not requesting a paddock. They are requesting a variant on a paddock style fence. Let's put it that way. So, but yes, this is new information, correct, Emily?
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. And this is a question for the homeowner. Is the desire for the 5-foot fence? I know a couple of things in the application had mentioned for a dog. You guys have a dog. Is the worry that if we have a 4-foot tall fence, you have a larger dog and they're just going to go right up and over it?
Yes, correct.
Okay. That's helpful information. I understand the desire. That is the only question I have right this second. Give me a little while to read through this in more detail.
Okay. And remember, we're looking at this from just an appeal standpoint to start. So just a reminder. Camelia, did you have any questions for us or the appellant?
Right, yes. So when you denied this application, was it mostly because of the style or also because of the height? The height wasn't in line with our guidelines on fence heights.
I'll give you my opinion, and Brian can say his opinion. A little of both. Mine was actually more geared toward the arrangement of the fence. I think with the design, I think because their house is set back and it is so wooded, that I think we could work through a solution to get to a similar design. Maybe it's this one, maybe it's not. But I actually had a problem with there was an affected party next door that didn't like the placement of the fence coming up so high on the property. And then they were also setting it directly on property lines where, the neighbor is not agreeing to it. RA was also recommending a 4-foot setback from the RA open space in the back. So that was honestly more of my reason for denial. We do have some exceptions in our fence standards for ornamental fences, which this maybe could consider. It's not like it's crazy different than what's in the neighborhood. There's also not a ton of neighborhood fences around this property that directly connect it, but it was really the orientation of the fence was really my the location of it was actually my biggest gripe. I don't know about Brian.
Mine was more with the style of fence just not being in my opinion, in conformance with the design guidelines.
Okay.
Michael, could I interject a comment there with regard to the placement?
Sure.
So recognizing that Reston was recommending a 4-foot setback, I am currently looking at not my immediate neighbor, but the next neighbor over who has the taller board-on-board privacy fence. And we know for a fact that her setback from the Reston property line is a mere 6 inches. So we bring that up as to the fact that the property setback of 4 feet would be substantially different than a similarly situated neighbor here. With respect to our neighbor on the other side, I objected to the inclusion of her affected party statement because Reston had notified us that she had withdrawn that affected party statement well before 2 days prior to the last DRB. So the inclusion of that and her statement made at the DRB review board, we feel is not consistent with the DRB process. She was, when we originally approached her and she agreed to the fence initially, we spent quite a good amount of time explaining where the proposed boundaries would be. Now, if it's merely backing off on that side to the corner, we would consider that. But, we are certainly, we had concerns with the way the DRB handled that last time.
And staff, can you talk on that affected party statement? Because it's still in our package. And was part of the official kind of information provided to us. Are you guys aware that the affected party rescinded their affected party status, or?
She registered as an interested party, and then when she was notified about the appeal, wanted to continue to be a registered affected party. So her information was provided to the DRB as an interested party statement.
Okay. Mike B, do you have any questions for welcome, by the way? Do you have any questions for us or the appellant?
No, sir, and thank you for the welcome. Like you said, there's a little bit of new information here. I think we can probably wrap this part up.
Yeah, I'd make a motion to hear this de novo.
All right, there's a motion to accept the appeal. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
There's a second from Camelia. All right, all those in favor of accepting the appeal, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Samantha, I didn't think I heard you vote. I don't know if are you still on?
Nay.
Nay. And then Brian and I abstain. So motion is accepted 3-1-2.
Point of order.
Oh, no?
Nope, that fails.
That fails?
Correct.
Oh, because it's 3 out of 6 technically.
Correct.
So it's a tie. Sort of. Not really a tie, it's a push. Okay. So the motion for the de novo dies. Do you want to talk about it a little bit more with Samantha, Emily, why you think?
I would just, I think we can, the reason I was wanting to hear it is that I think that we hear, rather than just saying no and submit things, I think we could get to a point where we could come up with a solution that we'd all be okay with, and that the homeowner could move forward with, getting a fence installed that would work for them. Again, with that, I'm not in favor of the fence that we are looking at right now, but I think there's to use Michael's terminology, I think there's a way to get there in the meeting here today, rather than making the homeowner come back to us with a new application. But that's just my thinking. Samantha, do you have any other questions? Does that make sense to you?
Yes, I really admire you and all other board member working really hard to try to find a common ground to get this solved, but it's both party all have to work on that to get to the agreement. So
And I think at the end of the day, right now it's the appeal part, right? It's not the fence is getting approved. It's just the appeal part. Emily believes that there's new information because of and Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, but because of the statement or the fence that's in the area that is a paddock style fence was not included in the original application. That's what you're claiming is the new evidence of why you're accepting the appeal, correct?
Yeah, I mean, part of our design guidelines quite literally say the fence conforms with the design. I'm sorry, that's not the right one I was looking for. The fence design should be consistent or compatible with other DRB approved fences in the neighborhood. And that is new information that we have here today that was not in the original packet. So I think it's new information, and we should hear it from scratch. But democracy still exists at the moment. So if we took a vote, we can vote again if someone else wants to make another motion. But that's where I'm at.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve or accept the appeal on the basis of new information.
Okay, there's a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion by Mike B, second by Emily. Any further discussion on it? I don't know. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Any against? It's fine, Samantha. You can vote any way you want. It's your. It's
Well,
up to you.
Right. That again, I still looking at the neighbor's fence. That it's to me is still not even similar to what proposed, and the openness is it's just not there. So can I stick to nay?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. We're not here to force hands. So, and then 2 abstentions. So, Tony, if we're in a standstill, do we just defer it? Does the appeal, or Cam is raising his hand? So, Cam, maybe you can weigh in.
I could recommend 2 options. One would be to defer it, but unknown in terms of the next full DRB meeting and the quorum that would be required to meet the threshold to accept or deny an appeal, or 2, with a recommendation that this fence style clearly has some support and some opposition, but the homeowner is able to submit an alternative application if they so choose that may be more in line with what the design review board members are thinking is more in line and consistent in the style. That doesn't necessarily address the other concerns that were presented in both Reston Association's affected party statement as well as the interested party, but it most certainly is an option that an alternative fence style application can be submitted in lieu of an appeal. But either option is available.
But we can't force them to submit a new application, correct?
Correct, but the next meeting would be in August.
Which would still be 6 members more than likely.
Correct. And so it would be up to the owner to determine their timeline and how they would like to proceed.
But
Okay.
if they submitted a new application, they could just go to a panel if it wasn't something that needed to come back to the full board. If it's a brand new application, it wouldn't necessarily
That's
go
gonna
to the
ask.
full board.
Is that correct, Cam?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, all right. So I cannot make the motion, but I think the deferral idea is a good one. Then gives the option to the applicant to decide whether they want to keep down this path. We should be getting a new member or 2 by the August, not by August, by September meetings. So, if you hear that, Miles, that's kind of what we're saying. Does somebody want to make a motion then?
I'd like, before I make a motion, I would like to just clarify that the homeowner understands what we're discussing here. So basically, if one of us were to make a motion to defer this application to the next available DRB meeting, it would be to continue down this road, seeking the current fence design. Alternatively, even if we defer it, the homeowner could withdraw their application during that process for this style of fence and then submit a new application for a different style of fence that either would not need to be reviewed, because there are some that don't need to be reviewed, or would go to a panel that would be, much sooner, because if we defer it, it has to go to a panel that's going to have quorum with the appeals. Does that make sense?
We can unmute the homeowner.
Miles, you still here?
Yes, we're still here. So we understand if you move to defer the decision until the next full board, that would be sometime in August. And during that time, we would have the opportunity to withdraw the current appeal and submit a new application with a different style of fence for consideration. Is that correct? Am I hearing you correct?
Correct. Mainly because by August, we're still only going to have 6 members. By September, we should be able to, we should hopefully have a couple more members added in that you could still, it's not a guarantee, but you could, roll your chances basically I think with the feedback, just, that we're getting, I think submitting an amended application with some concessions, I think is the potentially the good way to go. And then you can be heard by a panel by next week, or 2 weeks from now, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, just
Understood.
depending on the
Yes.
speed at
Understood.
which you're trying to move. I want to, make sure that that's clear.
Yes. Thank you, Emily.
All right. So Emily, you want to make a motion then?
Yes, I will. I would like to make a motion to defer this application to the next full DRB meeting.
All right. There's a motion. Do I hear a second?
I think
Mike Beal, second.
Second by Samantha. She beat you. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Any against? And then 2 abstentions. Motion passes 4-0-2. All right. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. All right. Moving on to application G1629 Valencia Way.
I believe we do have the applicants. I'm asking them to unmute.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, Pete Romanoli from 1629 here.
Great. Thanks, Pete, for joining us again. Welcome back. You guys have obviously updated the design with some feedback that we've given you over the last couple meetings that you guys have been here. But if you want to kind of walk us through the updates, and I think slide 7 staff is probably the best one to just kind of help him show kind of where they're at now. Right, Pete?
Yeah. I will do my best. So with the guidance from the DRB and the information we have and the resources we have, we worked with an engineering firm and had these drawings done, specifically regarding the roof, the windows, nothing specifically towards the stucco. I don't think that was necessarily part of the plans, but we wanted to give you guys something more substantial to look at in terms of a framework of a solution that might be put into place to remedy this.
Okay. Staff, do we still, I think I saw an affected party statement from the cluster. Do they have someone who wants to speak?
I was not able to identify anyone. If you are here as an AP on behalf of this, please raise your hand.
I don't think I saw a message from Jan. I don't think anybody from the cluster board is joining.
I've not seen anyone.
Okay. Well, let me thank you for coming back again. Let me go around, see if anyone has any questions, comments, and then we'll go from there, okay? Brian, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Emily?
The only question that I have really quickly, obviously this is a rendering that got done. Sort of a question and a comment. Is the intention, staff, if you go to page 7 again, you see the small line of fascia that's right below the roof line of the new addition. I just don't know how I feel about that being the bright white. I know the windows are done in white, but all of the rest of the fascia on the front of the home, if you see the other roof line has been stained and isn't that like bright white. But that's literally my only comment. Is I just noticed that fascia is white and that doesn't seem fitting with the rest of the home. But other than that, I think they did a great job and sort of acquiescing to everything that we've talked about so far. So
real quick, folks, I don't know exactly what docs you have. I will pat myself on the back because I created this, what you're looking at last time. There are like actual engineering drawings so there you go. There's the one with the green right there. That one, and there's one more. But yeah, so that's a kind of the front on and inside view. But the colored one that you were just looking for is also a good reference point. And again, where it's a little bit playing, bring me a rock here. You guys, I think, had originally recommended some idea of the fascia board, so it could be included, it could be not included. Quite frankly, if you look at these engineered drawings that came back, I don't believe they actually included that on the front side. So
yeah, no, I like the addition of the fascia. I just think that it should not be bright white. That was my only.
the color.
Yeah, just color commentary, quite
Yeah,
literally.
tracking it. Okay.
Great job. Did you Photoshop the?
Well, I don't want to give away my secrets, but I did my best.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, that's all from me.
And just to comment on this, I would definitely say we definitely need the fascia board. The fascia and the rake need to be painted the dark brown or whatever color, the one that's existing. And the structural engineer, unfortunately, they are not architects, so they did not show the fascia board like they should have. I've never seen a rafter tail cut to that angle on the end like that. So Mike B might be mad at me, but I think he could agree on this one.
I'm fine.
So, Camelia, did you have any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Mike B?
Negative, sir.
So my only other thing, I like this. I think the stucco is the way to go from an aesthetic standpoint with the existing. The only thing that is in the engineering drawings, one thing they do show is kind of like this trim / brick mold that the rendering does not. And so I'm thinking with the motion that I'm thinking of is that we need to make sure to match the other window that is in the stucco that has the element of trim that is also that same dark brown that is a cluster standard for around the window. I think the brick mold, let's call it, it's consistent with the windows up above and consistent with the window there above the front door. If you go back to slide 7, staff. If you zoom in on that kind of left window, that's almost identical sizes. I think we match that window detail to the left, staff. No, not that window. Yep, that window. Yep. See the brick mold kind of surrounding it. So if there's no other comments, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the application with the following modifications. That the fascia and rake boards be color matched to the existing fascia board, and that the windows mimic the same detail for the existing window in the stucco above the front door. Cam has his hand raised, which means I did something wrong. What's up?
Not something wrong. I just wanted to be to provide you all with a timeline needs to be established. And as we talked about previous iterations of this application, the homeowner purchased the property this way. And so there is no immediate need, but there is an active enforcement issue that needs to be resolved with a follow-up date from the DRB. So I would ask the DRB to ask the homeowner to provide a date certain that they believe that they can complete the required work to comply with the DRB decision.
Pete, do you think 180 days, 6 months is enough to get the work done?
No, this is going to be expensive and we don't have money to do this project right now.
We initially suggested a year or 2 in our original affected party statement from Reston Association.
I mean, guys, we're talking about $10,000 that I do not have.
All right, I'll make a motion to put a timeline of 18 months. So there's a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
All right, any further discussion on it? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes 6-0. Thanks, Pete, for joining again. All right. Moving on to application H. We have Reston Town Center North. Are the applicants here?
Can we unmute Eric and then Eric, you could just let us know who all needs to be unmuted as you get through your presentation.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I was talking, it was unmuted and then it was mute again. Sorry.
Welcome. If you could just let us walk us through the presentation, let staff know who you need unmuted, and then I know we're going to have a little bit of affected party public comment kind of situation, and then we'll come back and ask you guys questions. So best thing to do is just kind of go through the whole presentation, and then we'll come back and ask any questions specifically, if that works.
Sure. My name is Eric Inman. I'm with Fairfax County's Building Design and Construction Division. I'm also here with Tim Sampson, who will be leading our he's representing Innova, and he'll be leading the presentation today. If you would unmute him. And then he's got an introduction slide as well, so the whole team will be introduced. Next slide. So, you there, Tim? Uh-oh, you're not coming out well audio-wise. Can't hear you. Try muting and then unmuting, maybe. No, you sound like a chipmunk.
Yeah, not unless you sound like an underwater mouse.
How about that? Nah, yes.
There we go.
Okay, I'm gonna mute so that Tim can take over at this point. Thank you.
All right, with that inauspicious start, thank you for having us tonight. The screen is up with our presentation, but I'm not in control of it, I don't think. Who's driving it? And should I just point to when we're ready for the next slide, or
It's
can I
me.
share?
You can just let me know.
Staff is driving this.
Okay. Okay. So I'm happy to share a screen and do that myself, or if you want, but I'll leave it in your hands until you tell me otherwise. Again, so our next slide is our project team introduction slide. Again, I'm Tim Sampson. I'm under the Innova column there. I have presented to you all before. A land use and real estate lawyer, represent Innova. And also with the Innova team is Dave Sittler, who is an independent development consultant for Innova. And Dominic Boniuto is with Innova in the Community Relations Government Affairs department there. I think, as everybody knows, we're in what I call the small P partnership with Fairfax County, have been for many, many years on this property. Eric introduced himself, Joan Beecham, I think many of you know, I think a former Reston DRB member, also with the P3 team at the county. And then our project team, our design team is led by Land Design, Susan England, Stephanie Pankowitz and Stephanie Roa are all here. Our civil engineers, urban engineering, Pete Crawford is on, and our traffic consultant is Galloway with Will Johnson. Our next slide is historic, and but it's a good place to start the conversation or refresh the conversation about Reston Town Center North, because it shows the area that we're talking about, the area of land we're talking about. I think everybody's very familiar, but highlights the ownership interest there as between Innova in the blue and the Fairfax County in the gray. There's a long history there. The county first got the property in the early 70s. Innova built the first standalone emergency room, I think, in the country there in the northeast corner back in the late 70s on what was then county property. The blue property was conveyed to Innova in the 80s. Inova built for the county, the North County Human Services Building. Inova then later built the Sunrise facility that's there and the Cameron Glen Nursing Home that was there and is no longer there. I think you all know the Hunter Mill Supervisors Governmental Centers there, where Supervisor Alcorn's office is, and a police station. And then, of course, south of Bowman Town is the regional library and the Embry-Ruckler shelter. The next slide is a timeline, and I'm not going to belabor this timeline, but it's a good, kind of thing to highlight how long we've been at this. It's going on 15 years now that the county and Inova have been working on a plan for the next phase. I know many of you are familiar with some of it. We had got on the next slide in 2014, the comprehensive plan was approved with a concept plan for Reston Township North to look like this. We filed a zoning application to implement that comp plan, and then brought that to the DRB in 2017, 2018, and there was some concern about from the DRB about that layout, and so the layout shifted. And the next slide depicts a initial conceptual approval by the DRB in 2019 that featured a more curvilinear street configuration for the blocks, much different configuration for the central green that has been the organizing feature of the site, some tree save areas on the site. But then we got into a next round of amendment to the comprehensive plan that began in January of 2020, and some ideas about shifting the orientation of the project happened again. And then eventually in July of 21, the plan up on the screen there received conceptual approval by you all, by the DRB, to reflect, again, similar concepts, curvilinear streets, tree save areas on the sites, but a different and much larger configuration for the central green. And if you back up one slide, what you'll notice in the 2019, just one, there you go, the 2019 approval, the central green we had progressed the concepts that were going to happen in the green, the design elements, areas of open lawn and play areas and those sorts of features. If you go to the next slide again, then the 2021 concept approval changed the alignment of the streets, but at that point in time was just kind of holding a green space for the central green, and we had not advanced that design through this process with you all. At that time, we were trying at that point to just get a grid of streets and orientation for the blocks, that we could land on. And at that point in time, you all had, or I say you all, I recognize some of the folks have changed. This body, the DRB, had made some recommendations of things to advance from this approval. I'm going to touch on those as we go on, but the last of the 4 bullets that were recommended was that the final approval that is by you all should be in line with the forthcoming, at that point in time, comprehensive plan. And so again, the comprehensive plan was being amended at that time, and in the next slide then reflects what the comprehensive plan eventually did include as a concept plan approval when it was finalized in 2023. And long story short, same grid of streets, same orientation of the central green, same tree save on the on those blocks, all of those features very consistent exactly with what the conceptual approval by the DRB was in July of 2021. And so by that point in time, by 2023, we had kind of the foundation for going back to the zoning process and trying to advance the final design of the project, because we had a block layout, street grid layout that had been approved conceptually by the DRB. It had been then adopted into the comprehensive plan. And then along that timeline in 2023, there was a separate task force that undertook to evaluate where the uses, in particular the public uses, should be organized around the central green, and those are reflected now in this slide. And just kind of working around from the upper left, Block 1 identified as a public school site. Block 3 is the home of the new Reston Regional Library. Block 5, the relocated home of the Health and Human Services building, which is on Block 1 today, and a new home for the Embry Rucker shelter. Block 7 is the home for a new athletic field. Block 8 for a new recreation center that has been fairly long anticipated. And then blocks 2, 4, and 6 are what we refer to as the Inova blocks, which would be are represented in the comprehensive plan and intended for redevelopment in a mix of residential and non-residential uses, in particular, the opportunity to continue for Inova to continue to provide medical care facilities on the site. So with all of that foundation, then, we get into 2024 and begin to reinitiate our zoning applications. And this is a excerpt from the application that we filed in late April of 2025. And throughout 2024, a large part of 2024, about this time last year in particular, we were engaged in a community process that the folks from Land Design are going to tell you more about to fill in the central green. So again, in the diagram you're seeing before you, same grid of streets, same block alignment, same tree save areas, same configuration, size of the central green as the DRB had conceptually approved in July of 2021 and subsequently became part of the comprehensive plan in 2023. What we've advanced now in particular, among other things, is filling the central green back in. And what we did was we took some of the concepts that you all had seen and adopted conceptually in the 2019 approval, brought those forward. We had an extensive community outreach survey and other engagement to gain input from the community on what the features of the central green would be. The other thing, so there's a slide later in the deck that I will breeze through, but and we can, no, you don't need to go there right now. Thank you. I just want to hit on the high point of kind of where we're at schedule wise, right? So we have refiled our zoning application in late April. We have, just as of the end of June, gotten an initial set of comments on that application from Fairfax County and VDOT regulatory staff. We're in the process of digesting all of what those comments are and working toward our responses to those. We have met on an initial basis with the Reston Planning and Zoning Committee. We've had a community meeting, and we're here tonight to begin a conversation with you all that we don't expect to end tonight, right? We will anticipate that our zoning process will be to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors sometime, hopefully in the first quarter next year. And so it's our expectation that we're coming to you tonight to continue a dialogue that we have been having for many years, but without an expectation that it ends tonight either. And if we will answer as many questions as we are able tonight, and if there are questions that we can't answer tonight, we'll be happy to go away, find answers, and come back when the time is right. So again, just outlining then what is our application now. It is a kind of a resubmission, but an update really to what we filed initially in 2017. And again, it depicts the streets and the blocks that are created by the streets. Importantly, the streetscape, which was not a feature previously, but is a feature directly related to one of the comments that you all had made in the 2021 approval, which was to further define the buffers surrounding the development blocks with illustrative cross sections and dimensions. And that is all part of now our application so that what we are proposing is, from county purposes, a final design that for the streets and the streetscape and the central green, and then what would come in the future is separate applications for development within the blocks. And again, we've identified in the zoning, what, you know, and we just don't have it labeled on the plan in front of you. But again, as we saw before, we'll identify what uses will go in those blocks. And then the next slide depicts the tabulations that go with our zoning application that depict the building massing that will occur in those blocks, the heights of buildings, number of units in residential buildings, gross floor area for non-residential buildings, and that sort of thing. Overall, there's a total of about 0.82 or 0.89. There's two options. Is the overall FAR. It's substantially lower density than was initially requested in 2017 based on the old comprehensive plan, and consistent with the current comprehensive plan, there is a maximum of 1,000 dwelling units represented, and that, you know, not including the required affordable workforce housing that would go with that. So again, the tabulations describe, and we go on to the next slide, is just a again a representation back. Whoop, one more back. There, thanks. It's same slide twice. It may have been confusing, but I wanted to show the tabulations, but not bore everyone with them. Come back to this again. So what you see then is the framework for the infrastructure that will support the development within the blocks to come. And the application will define as well as it can what's going to happen with those in those blocks in terms of uses, massing, and commitments that the county is typically provided for development, green building proffers and proffers that discuss very minutia of electrical vehicle charging stations, those sorts of things. We're able to identify a lot of that now, even and design toward those elements, even though we don't have buildings designed. The next thing I want to talk about while this slide is up, and this was a conversation that has occurred for a long time with this group and with RA more generally, is an understanding of how the metrics for various open space calculations and tree preservation calculations are met. And what we have been careful to do with the application that is represented on the plan before you is make sure that with all of what we're showing on this plan, the minimum requirements in the county for urban parks, for publicly accessible open space, for tree canopy and tree preservation are being met with this application for the entirety of the site. So more particularly, the central green by itself meets the urban park requirement for the entirety of the project. The central green, the streetscape, the tree save areas meet the publicly accessible open space requirement, minimum requirements as for the entire project. The tree preservation that's reflected in the several tree save areas that we're committed to within the project will meet those minimum requirements for the entirety of the project. So what that means is we know that when I'll pick on block 4, when block 4 comes in or it'll be the same with any block, there will be additional open space, of course, provided in block 4 because it's not going to be built, to the back of the streetscape on all corners there. It will be designed and have open space elements to make it an attractive project. All of those open space areas will be in addition to the minimum requirements. And so what we can tell you now is you don't have to wait to see what's coming next in order to know that any minimum requirement is going to be met. The minimum requirements will be met now, and then we'll have a discussion down the road when we have detailed designs for the buildings that go within the blocks. The next slide then is very specific to the Reston Association, and there is, as I think many of you know, there's a memorandum of understanding from the 2016, I believe, timeframe with Reston Association about how open space in the project was going to be handled. And this is, there's overlaps with how it works from a regulatory perspective at Fairfax County, but it's not exactly the same. And it was all, it arose out of a discussion to address a historic open space designation on the site that had started in the early 70s. It had a 10-acre open space requirement. And so the goal was to replicate the idea of a 10-acre open space requirement. And you can see that MOU requirement of 10 acres there near the bottom of the chart. And what we're showing here is a total, just the total shown here is 11.65 acres. And there's the detail above of how do you get there. You know, there's the central green, there's the athletic field I spoke of before, parcel 3F up in the upper left corner, areas around the central green streetscape. The rec center gets a credit for open space, and then the various tree save areas. Again, the importance of this, I think, is twofold. One is I know that this is something very important to the Reston Association, and something that we wanted to make sure, of course, that we're remain committed to, and that we can demonstrate how we're meeting it. And importantly, as I was saying with the regulatory requirements, how we're meeting this commitment to open space in the Reston Association MOU in the project that we have provided now. And we're not in a place of telling you, you know, hey, just wait, it'll be great someday when we get around to developing block 2 or block 1 or whatever. Every bit of open space that is added when block 2 is developed will be in addition to these minimums provided here. So our next slide is going to then, I'm going to hand the floor over to Susan England at Land Design. So if Susan could be unmuted, and we'll go from there. And then again, back later, Susan will give the floor back to me if that is acceptable to everyone, and we'll close it out.
Thank you, Tim. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Thank you. So as Tim indicated, he gave a great overview kind of the larger development plan, and now we really want to dive in more specifically to the Central Green. So as he alluded to, we've done a number of community engagement touch points since we were last before you all in 2020. And that started really with the 2023 Reston Center North Task Force that was convened, as Tim mentioned, in order to help determine what uses were going to be on each of the county blocks. Then once that was kind of better defined for us, we did a community meeting a little over a year ago in June. And that was kind of bringing everyone back up to speed, and then on the process, introducing new people to the process, and bringing everyone looks like I'm getting some notification that my volume is low, so I'm going to pause for a second and see if I can get that. All right, this is about as high as I can get it. Is that any better?
Much better.
Okay, great. I was gonna say, I've got a fan on I can turn off if needed. Okay, so we've got the town hall kind of restarted the project with the community, and that also launched a public survey that was open and available. It was open approximately 3 weeks. We've got some more information about that in a moment, specific to that survey. But that really gave us a lot of good information about what the broader community was interested. We took that information together with the site constraints and opportunities, what will be the existing conditions based on the development plan, and did intensive stakeholder work session with the county stakeholder group, and included members from staff, and I think RA attended as well. And that kind of walked through 3 different concept scenarios to test out the different ideas that the community had brought forward and what they had said they really wanted. So if you go to the next slide, this dives a little bit more into the community-wide survey that we provided or launched. We had 383 participants. The vast majority of those respondents were actually Reston residents. We had also respondents that worked in Reston, so very local to the project area. And through a number of different questions, we came about with these key takeaways from the responses. One of the top things that people were looking for was respite and access to the outdoors. So understanding that people really wanted those park elements was a top priority for being outdoors, as well as health considerations. Not surprisingly, along with that, people were very interested in having trees and shade. This was also, we were able to tell that people were very interested in having sort of a traditionally landscaped park as opposed to a more naturalized one. We also learned that people were very interested in large organized events. Social activities ranked high in general, but especially those organized events over smaller group activities. And respondents wanted a diversity of offerings. Now, it might seem contrary, but we also heard that quiet spaces were also very important. So figuring out best ways to balance those scale of those larger events, but also providing smaller quiet spaces where people could feel respite from that urban environment. Next slide, please. We then took those key takeaways and the information from the survey and distilled it. Okay, well, how could this take a physical form in the central green? We made sure that each of these different items we could tie back to one of those key takeaways, and really everything we tied back to at least two. And I won't go into the weeds of this, but this just helps demonstrate the process that we went through to get from that survey to an actual physical plan. On the next slide, then we'll start going through more specifics of the plan itself. If you could please go to the next slide. Thank you. So taking a look at the, kind of starting with the center of the green is that big obvious green space in the middle, the large lawn area. The site has a good bit of topography from east to west. East is the high point, going down to the northwest corner. That upper left-hand corner is the lowest point on the site. This starts to set opportunity up for not a formal, but an amphitheater type experience across that lawn space. We have accessible walkways throughout, and so the walkways around that central lawn space are a maximum of 5%. So when we talk about slope, yes, there's a lot of slope across the entire site, but within that lawn area specifically, we're at a max of about 5%. So you can imagine setting up that lawn space facing towards the plaza between the lawn and block 3. That plaza space is intended to be able to host a range of events, could have a stage located there, but we don't stop there. And moving into the streetscape of Street C, that is a proposed private street that would allow us to be able to close that section of street for events, both having events in the street itself, closing it down for a festival, for example, or being able to position a stage in that street so that the audience could even spill not just on the lawn area, but into the plaza space itself. This also sets up a great relationship with the library on block 3 and creates that direct visual relationship as well as that physical connection. We have ringed the central lawn area with trees to provide that shade and provide that visual organization to the space, and also provide some light separation to the other spaces. along the northern edge of the lawn area between the central lawn space and the playground to the north is a building identified for restrooms. These would help extend the activity that people can spend the time, extend the time that people can spend in the park and help support those events as well. As I mentioned, to the north of that, closest to the future school site is a playground space that would be ringed by landscape as well as fence to help keep the children within bounds, but open to the east or to the right to a smaller lawn space that could serve for a runaround area for the children, space for the parents or caretakers to sit and relax while they keep an eye on the kids. And it could also serve for smaller event space. In that northwest corner, the top left, as I mentioned, that's the lowest point on the site. So that is where we are planning stormwater management to happen. We would like this to be in sort of a garden-esque type feel. So it would be planted and landscaped with a walkway ringing around and bench overlooks to really be able to enjoy the space. Similarly, working around the other edges of the central green on the far right, the far east side of the site, getting to that idea of having smaller pockets of quiet spaces for respite. There are smaller seating areas where we would have movable furniture and fixed furniture for those quieter spaces that again are overlooking the central space, have some visibility connections, but are a little bit more tucked away, as well as landscape around the southern edge of the central green up against Cameron Glen Drive, having landscape there to provide a little bit of light separation to the street, trying to kind of wrap that green around the park. I will also note that in that main plaza space, there's a gold asterisk sort of in the center of it. That's where we have set aside or planned space for a potential interpretive feature of some sort. Haven't yet determined what that's going to be, but have identified a location there prominently in the plaza. We have also identified on the southeast corner, the bottom right corner of the central green, an area for Capital Bike Share to help facilitate access to and from the central green, being right there on Library Street, was sort of our primary walkways and access through the center of the development. And along the bottom, you can see some character images generally representative of some of these ideas that we have about what the quality and character of the space would be. Next slide, please. This is a schematic bird's eye view looking from that corner that I was just mentioning, that southeast corner, looking across the central green towards the library and the future school site. Just gives you kind of a general idea of the openness of that center, the landscape wrapping around the edges to try and provide that light separation from the urban environment. Next slide, please. I think maybe, yeah, other direction. Slide 18. There you go. Thank you. So a quick look at the access. This is highlighting the pedestrian and bike access in and around the site. We have bike lanes proposed around the perimeter on both Barron Cameron Town Center, or excuse me, there's a separated path on Barron Cameron, bike lanes on Town Center and Fountain Drive, as well as Bowman Town Center. It would be shared use within the site. It's going to be a lower volume of traffic and lower speeds as well. So we believe that the shared traffic is appropriate for those conditions. As I mentioned, Library Street, we do see that as a primary connector for pedestrian activity. It abuts right along the central green, so provides access through that, and providing that access not just to the central green, but through it to the other parcels as well. Next slide. Thank you. These are just a few of the streetscape cross sections that are included in the full development plan. I won't go into all of the details, but generally gives you a flavor of what the conditions look like where we have on-street parking. We will have a pedestrian step-off zone in those cases, a 10-foot landscape amenity panel that does include that 2-foot ped zone for where we have on-street parking. This on the top, section A, it shows a good example of Library Street where we are in between two of the development blocks. And the bottom one shows a condition where we're development block looking out to the central green on the right-hand side of that section. Next slide. And just a couple more sections showing those different conditions again, with between two development blocks, and then another section looking with the central green on the one side. And with that, I will turn it back over to Tim to go over phasing.
Thanks, Susan. I hope I'm not the underwater mouse this time. And all right, got the thumbs up. The next slide is a quick couple diagrams on phasing. And as it's a obvious question, I think that folks will have, like, how does this all come together? And what we've done in this diagram that is part of our submission is identify which portions of the infrastructure would come if each of the blocks north of Bowmantown were the first to develop. And that's, the important concept here is to demonstrate that in each of those scenarios where any one of those upper 6 blocks develop, the central green comes along with it. So the central green is a feature in the first phase of development. We don't anticipate improving the central green to the extent we've showed earlier with the, immediately in initial phase, because obviously with immediate construction going on around it, we don't want to, make that investment and have it disturbed, with the immediate next phase of construction. What we anticipate and is that, and we strongly anticipate this, that the library on block 3, and that's the third diagram across the top there, would be the first phase. That the county is ahead of the other blocks, Inova and any of its blocks on that portion of the project, and so that's how the anticipated first phase would go. We think that the second phase, we lost there you go. The second phase would likely be block 5, which is the graphic and the row below in the middle, because that's where the Embry Rucker shelter replacement would be. And then eventually, the other phases will come into place. What's helpful with the way we have oriented the phasing of this is that the blocks can develop other than block 1, where there is a existing building. The county can begin to develop block 3 and block 5 without having to relocate existing uses. And that way the library and shelter in their current locations can remain while the library and shelter are rebuilt, or the new homes for them are built on blocks 3 and 5. And then the blocks below Bowmantown, where the current library and shelter are, would support the construction effort for those blocks, would provide parking on an interim basis for those blocks, and then eventually, several years after those blocks develop, would be ready to reposition for their own purposes. The next slide then is a quick schedule I touched on this earlier. I won't belabor the details. We put it in there just again for a high sense of understanding of timeline. As I mentioned before, we're anticipating hopeful hearings on the regulatory side in the near the end of the first quarter of next year, with community processes. We've got under there the community engagement box to occur through the balance of 2025, and we just have these are broad placeholders, but wanted to put something out there for just to provide a set of expectations. There was one thing, and the next slide will help me. Again, it's just our concluding slide. But I was checking my notes while Susan was speaking, and I forgot to address one thing, and that is the parcel 3F, which is the parcel up in the upper left corner of the project. And one of the comments, let me back up. When we had proposed this previously, and submitted our zoning application previously, and we're back through the review process with the DRB in 2018, 2019, 20. We had anticipated a plan that would improve parcel 3F and make a park-like feature over there. And not the more intensive park like the Central Green, but something more passive with some trails and areas for various activity, but at a smaller scale. One of the comments that we got from this group, and then also from many, was how to best connect those ideas, in those concepts for the various parks with what's going on. And the one of the comments from then that came out of the recommendation in 2021 was to provide a more cohesive merge in design and active involvement with the Edgewater Park. And what happened in the meantime is that our design intent for the overall project shifted away from having Edgewater Park improved as an active place, because it is, we think, better served to support the site and the broader site to remain in its existing kind of natural tree save type of state. We think that it's challenging, given its dimensional aspects, to implement a park of any kind of substance there, and that doing so kind of competes with the focal point that we want to have at the Central Green. Thank you. And again, there was the challenge of getting across Town Center Parkway to get there and everything else. So I meant to mention that earlier. It's not a great way to conclude a presentation, but I noted, I left that kind of hanging from the recommendations that you all had, or the DRB had made in 2021, needed some tie off there. So I appreciate you letting me kind of take us back in the presentation a little bit for that. Otherwise, that again, that's where we're at. We certainly appreciate your time listening to us thus far, and happy to do what we can to address questions and comments that you may have.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Staff, do we have, I don't know if there's official affected parties, but interested parties. I mean, I'm sure the public there's multiple people here from the public. Are we going to do kind of a open comment, kind of what was our thought for tonight?
Well, we do have registered affected parties, and then we have our RA here as an affected party.
Wow.
Part of our governing documents, if you're not an RA member, there's no comment period. So I'll leave that up to the DRB.
Right, but I guess, okay, let me back up then. What was the notification process for this presentation to surrounding RA-owned property owners?
The standard 500 around the perimeter. So there have been a number of members that have been notified. So surrounding properties, we've had a number of properties that were non-RA to reach out, and staff did inform them that there are other forms that they would be able to reach out to Fairfax County directly to voice their concerns. But per our governing documents, they aren't able to be registered as an affected party or speak at the meeting.
So Michael, I'll chime in. The applicant is required to follow Resolution 11, which contemplates notification within 500 feet. This project and these parcels are unique in the fact that they're in Reston Town Center North, in which there is not a substantial amount of Reston Association property that surrounds this cluster or these parcels. So the applicant did meet the notification requirements and notified several adjacent properties that are not Reston Association covenanted properties. However, they did submit confirmation to the DRB Secretary of Notification to clusters that are beyond the 500 feet, so specifically Whisper Woods, Bell Castle Court, the courts, some along Reston Parkway behind the Harrison Apartments. They did a very wide net of notification. In addition, this was publicized in the Reston Association newsletter that goes out on Fridays, as well as they sent their own notification and have their own website. So they have met the notification requirements here. There are two registered affected parties, and then there may be interested parties. So at the pleasure of the DRB, we can do the affected parties first and then open it up to anyone who may have a comment that may not have been able to register. Those individuals would receive 3 minutes if they are an RA member, property owner, after they state their name and address. And then those that are interested or representing a group would receive 5 minutes.
Perfect. Sounds good to me.
LaShonda, can we go down the list, please?
Sure. So first we have our first registered affected party. That would be the Bell Castle Court. Asking you to unmute. Do we have a representative from Bell Castle Court Association? If you are present, could you please raise your hand? Okay, moving on. Do we have Dennis Hayes from the Friends of Reston Regional Library present? If you are here, could you please raise your hand? Okay, it looks like we were able to identify the affected party. Patrick, are you able to mute? Is this for Bell Castle?
I was not able to identify the.
Oh, wasn't able.
parties for
Okay.
this.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And those are all the registered affected parties that we have listed. If there is anyone that is an interested party, well, I'm sorry. Does Reston Association have an affected party statement that they would like to speak on?
We do. All right. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Cam Adams. I represent Reston Association. I'm the director of covenants here at Reston Association, and we registered on behalf of the Reston Association Board of Directors. Reston Association has registered as an affected party to ensure there is an opportunity to provide feedback and input as the DRB reviews and considers each leg of this proposed plan for Reston Town Center North, which is subject to RA's covenants. With the present plan proposal before the DRB, RA would encourage the DRB or remind the DRB of the prior decision letter dated July 27, 2021, which included the following recommendations from the DRB as depicted on page 94 of the application. So if staff could put that on the screen, that would be fantastic. Final approval should be in line with the forthcoming amended comprehensive plan. The applicant is to provide a more cohesive merge and design and active involvement with Edgewater Park. The applicant is to further define the buffer surrounding the developmental blocks with illustrative cross sections and dimensions. The applicant is to confirm and provide approximate minimum percentages of additional open green space per developmental blocks, in addition to the total open space requirements in the memorandum of understanding. With the last item regarding the memorandum of understanding and this leg of the plan, RA is interested in ensuring the MOU is followed and that there are 10 acres of open space. In addition, the association would like to ensure the DRB is aware The Reston Association will be commenting on zoning, proffer language, and land use mix elements at the appropriate times with the appropriate entities, and is looking forward to the applicant attending a future land use committee meeting this fall, which DRB and other RA committees will receive an invite to attend. Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, is there anyone that would like to speak as an interested party? If so, could you please raise your hand so staff can identify you? I'm not seeing any hands raised.
I saw one, I believe. I've asked them to unmute. Susan England.
No, I was one of the presenters and with the applicant, so I don't have any.
Oh, I thought I
interested
saw
party
you raise your
today.
hand.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, though.
Mr. Chairman, we have no other hands raised at this time.
Great, thank you. All right, well, let's go around the room, ask any questions that we have, and then before we get started, though, I do want to ask one question to the applicant. So for tonight, what approval are you seeking? Are you seeking just Central Green approval? Are you seeking also the development, kind of from that table, the certain heights and things like that as well? What exactly are you guys seeking tonight?
If we could unmute Eric and Tim.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks, Michael. Again, tonight, we're not necessarily seeking an approval of anything. We've got a process ahead of us. If you are ready to approve something, we would love it. That is not our expectation. What eventually we are going to request your approval on is the development plan as we have advanced it, to include the elements of the Central Green. The confirmation, the approval that we got before was conceptual, and it had those follow-up items which I've tried to address and would be happy to address further. And then the project has advanced, since the concept that we presented in 2021, and want to make sure that as reflected in the materials that we submitted with this resubmission, if you will, that we have the DRB's approval to go forward. Again, not expecting that to occur tonight, but that you've had a chance to hear from us about what the plans are, to evaluate the plans, ask whatever questions you need, and make sure we're all aligned in an approval going forward.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Tim. All right, let me go around the room, see if anyone has any questions for you guys. I would also just maybe unmute Susan preemptively, because I feel like some of the questions might be going to her court as well. So, all right, let's go around the room. Brian, do you have any questions for the applicants?
Questions or comments?
Whatever you want, Brian. It's your floor.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I'm not sure if I do have a couple questions. I mean, I guess on the Central Green, I mean, you haven't gotten to the point of you looking at like materials for pavers, retaining walls, things like that yet. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. And so, and to be clear too, and again, Susan, please, correct me here if needed, but the expectation where we're at in the process with the county from a regulatory perspective, right, is that the level of detail that we have in the plans will hopefully be the basis of a zoning level of approval. And then we will have to, go through an engineering exercise with the, far greater level of detail for the very specific design features that go forward. And again, Susan, correct me if I'm not stating that right, but again, that's a step two that if this board wants to see that level of detail, we will come back when we have that level of detail. And again, it's kind of part of this iterative process of gaining a level of approvals with each stage of our applications here.
And I'll just chime in and say that what Tim stated is correct. We've attempted with the rendering to kind of indicate where there would be specialty paving versus plain concrete. But as to exactly what those, what that specialty paving is exactly, we're not to that level just yet. We do have some character images for elements like benches, trash receptacles, and so forth in the development plan. I don't remember off the top of my head what sheet number that is, but those other subsequent details would come later.
That makes sense. Thank you both for that answer. I just wanted to make sure. I will say, looking at this slide is perfect. Actually, I'm really encouraged by the design of the central green. I think, conceptually, I think it's looking really great because I like that very much, like that the central green is broken up into so many different zones where you can imagine like it having such a variety of uses from the community all at one time. Especially like I agree with like some of the survey participants you got where you've got these like quiet zones around the edge of the central green, which I think is fantastic. I like this kind of organic nature of the paths through it and everything like that. So I personally am really happy. I think my favorite moment of this in combination with block 3 with the library is just imagining that moment where you've taken the central green and you've kind of pulled it across street C in this diagram, and you've like really pulled it over to block 3 to try to imagine that, when Restonians are going to the library, that, they're also like, hey, let's go to the park, or vice versa when you're there. And it's kind of, in my opinion, it looks like it could create some more kind of like, natural, kind of connection across the different sites and really kind of activating this central green. So I'm really very happy to see that. I think that moment where you like pulled the paving across and everything like that is going to, encourage cars to slow down and things like that for people crossing over there, and just kind of be like a natural barrier for people to kind of slow down and observe and things like that. So so I think that is great. And it looks like, I guess maybe my only question, and I don't know how this would work yet, but I mean, you obviously made like a very intentional way of kind of in that same way of like you've pulled the central green across block 3, you tried to pull it down Library Street and make a connection to Reston Town Center, which I think is really great because while this is a distinct neighborhood, I mean, obviously what's great about Reston is like we've got all these different areas connected and everything like that. So I can picture people walking from the town center over to Town Center North. Did you all look at, or is there any possibility of extending that connection in the east-west direction, specifically over? And I know this is tough because Reston Parkway divides it, but like where we've got like the Green Trail and things like that in kind of the original Reston area, is there any way to kind of pull that green aspect, I guess, on this screen to the right on Street D, and likewise to like try to foster a connection of people, naturally kind of using the trail to get over here?
Yeah, so Street D, to your point, is one of the streets that has a tree save identified. It's not shown in this particular view. We go back to an overall plan. There you go. Thank you. So block 4, we have we've got a tree save on the northeast corner of block 4, that end of Street D. And the intent is that the streetscape along block 4 edge would help connect the central green to that tree save and kind of link you to the east. Similarly to the west with block 3.
Thank you. Excellent. Michael, that's all for me for now.
Okay. Samantha?
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the presentation. And I am considering to this project. This is new to me. And I joined the board later on, so they're kind of new. I live, my house is a little bit north of this site, behind the Home Depot, that area. So I'm very familiar with the site. Understand that the you mentioned about the topo change is really greatly. So I see the block 2, 4, and 6 will eventually become a high residential development. Look at the FAR and that schedule chart, understand that could potentially be very tall building, dense as well. So it look like we're gonna have this 3 block erect very tall wall against the green zone we try to create. I would just wonder that would it be beneficial run some massing study? Oftentimes we see in the early master planning, they start to putting up the building, possible building block. So we start to see how they affect and surrounding this central green area. That is something I think will help everybody to visualize the space down the road. The other thing is, from the community survey, I hear that it's kind of people like to have a small activity in the green area also, as well as a large event. I feel like I'm struggling understand this green space, the program part of it, like for a large event, how many participants was projected and how they arrive the site. Are they all arrive on foot or are they driving here? And then I start looking at the street landscape. It's mostly one lane on each side with parallel parking on both sides. So it looks like it's try to create a more community green space. But I'm happy to hear that the large event was also in the back of the mind. I just feel like two things is a little bit fighting each other, and like to hear your thought on this.
Yeah, Tim, do you want me to take this one?
Sure.
Yeah. So, as far as how the central green can be utilized for large event spaces, what we have done is we have, to the development itself, we have public transportation that runs north and south through Library Street, along with the pedestrian pathways and the bike pathways. But we realize that larger events will have more people coming to the park location. And so the county has planned and will be planning additional parking in the block 5 just south of the central green. We have the HHS Health and Human Services building. In that building, we will have structured parking, and we are over parking that parking garage for that building to provide additional spaces. I think we are running our counts right now. We're really early in the phase doing massing, but I think we're running around 100 additional spaces specifically for the central green. And that's above and beyond what is there for the HHS building, which of course, most events will probably occur outside of business hours, which means there's, parking beyond just the additional that we're providing. So that the intent is that we're allowing this, additional free parking to exist before, in a phasing concept, before we get the Health and Human Services, the new building built. We will provide a temporary parking lot as well that will help support some of the parking needs that we are going to be adjusting from the North County Governmental Center, but also to provide additional parking, not as much as the final parking in the HHS building, but as an interim for the central green. So that's where the county's putting the extra effort there to try to help with, the traffic needs for a larger event at the central green.
And then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, additional follow-up on that. Just like the rest of the Fairfax County, we have a pretty good bus system that is this part is also in the master planning somewhere?
Yeah, I believe so. We're working with FCDOT to extend the bus system, and the bus system is intended to go up Library Street. As far as the breadth of that, I don't know the details on that yet. I know that there was some conversation of that earlier, Tim, in the previous iterations, but I don't know how far that has gone.
Only that far. Yeah, that the intention is for, and Will, if you know better, let me know, but that for bus service to be to the site, but we don't know the locations yet of where stops would be, shelters would be.
Thank you.
I think the other thing too, just quickly, to your first point about the, you know, the massing and the building heights, there are cues for what's to come that are set forth in the comprehensive plan that are important to recall here. I did not touch on those, you know, initially, but the Paramount existing Paramount building there, which is to the south of Block 8 on Library Street and New Dominion, it kind of sets the framework for how the building height and massing would work, because the building on Block 6, that's probably a good slide. So that if there's Block 8 is the one in the lower right, so that stepped kind of corner there in white that is not part of the application is the existing Paramount condominium building. And so the building, the intention is, and as reflected in the comprehensive plan recommendations, is that the building on Block 6 be no higher than the Paramount, and then taper in height down toward the north. So as it steps from Block 6 to Block 4 to Block 2, and then the other cue to take is that I think the nature of the development that's approved, and been long approved and long not developed in the Spectrum project there to the east. But we've long tried to take our cues from again the existing development pattern around the site.
Thank you. Now I get a better feeling of how that mass is going to erect. Thank you.
Camelia, do you have any questions, comments?
Can you circle back to me, Michael, if that's okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Emily?
Hi. Thank you so much for the great presentation, guys. I am going to echo some of the sentiments of my colleagues. I started clapping when Samantha, when you guys started talking about the buses, because that's something that I don't really, you guys talked about the bike share and having a capital bike share and having these areas for pedestrians, but we have the metro, we have buses, and I mean, even things like Uber drop-offs or, like ride share. There are going to be, if this is a live, work, play scenario, I can imagine saying like, oh, hey, there's going to be a concert on the Central Green tonight and no one wants to deal with parking. How do we get over there? I like the grid pattern that we have here, and I know that I read through a little bit of the design that everything, with the exception of Fountain Drive, is supposed to be a 25 mile per hour with those traffic calming measures of the street parking. But I am worried about, big buses coming through and trying to figure out how they're going to flow, where they're going to pull over, where the stops might be. Are there any covers for bus stops? We had a couple of bikes shared spots, but just kind of thinking about the public transport a little bit more and how we would connect to the metro and kind of the busing system and even like things like rideshare. The other thing that I was looking at is the plan for every intersection to just be a stoplight, or are they stop signs? Is it going to be a mixture? I noticed on one of the original plans, it looked like we had a roundabout that we were thinking about. I know, like, especially in areas where we've got, you know, that 4 intersection where I believe it's Street B. I can't see from how far this is zoomed in, but I'm just, yeah, these are things that I like what we've got going on so far, but I'd like to see a little bit more development about the traffic calming measures and thinking about things of that nature. For our asterisk, this is just an idea. It's something that we do. I'm thinking of the civil engineering program that does the art display on the lake. We do encourage part of that community engagement, rotating art displays. So just something to think about that, and is something that we have done in other areas in Reston thus far. I also echoed the question about, I have in my notes 3F, because again, I am newer to this project, and I actually do think that there is going to be almost a need for a design and a connection to that space, because I can already see the troublesome teenagers. I was one, and that's what that park is going to end up, or that woodland area is going to end up being, if it's right next to all of this development, but it's not really designed, it's not monitored. I can just see it becoming ill-used, shall we say. And I think even with something like very minimal, like just some extra like wood chip pathways and maybe like a boardwalk that would overlook, like it, I think I'd like to see the tree save area kept as much as possible, but maybe just a little bit of connection to the space so it feels designed, it feels intentional, and it's not just going to end up being a space where teenagers go to get in trouble. Other items that I had in my notes, just, you know, talking about all of this live, work, play. And I know the blocks themselves might deal with this, but like dogs at all, if there's an area where we could, you know, I saw in one of the original designs, there was like a sports field that was planned. With this much space, are you guys thinking about kind of how to implement like a potential dog park or any other kind of that kind of gathering space? And if so, the stormwater implications of said dog park. Metro connection. I think the other things that I had were just talking about the buffers between Baron Cameron and Block 1 and 2. Those are shown as very skinny planting buffers at the moment, and right now that is a bit more developed just to make the space feel. Baron Cameron's a big road, and I was just thinking that I would almost encourage us to set a minimum for those blocks, for like the exterior blocks, to maybe have more of a vegetative buffer, whether that's 40 feet, 50 feet, whatever it is, so that we're not, you know, having buildings going straight up to the road on that side, because again, it is busy space. And the last thing, if no one has looked it up yet, this project actually reminds me a lot of a project that was done down in Cary, North Carolina. Theirs was a 7-acre park that they had in the center there, but it's very similar to kind of this multi-use function, and it's a very successful space, so that everybody uses and everybody loves. So as a case study for my fellow DRB members, it's CARY, Cary, North Carolina, has something super similar to this from a central green perspective. So those are just my comments. I don't need feedback on it today unless you have answers, but those were things that I was thinking about looking at these plans as we were walking it through. I think we're on our way there with almost all of these, but as we progress forward, those are things that I would like to see as we move through.
Well, thanks for all those thoughts, and I won't try to respond to all of them. I've got notes on all of them, and we'll talk about them. A couple thoughts. One is that your comments related to all the things going on the streets and making sure we can, accommodate buses and provide for bus shelters. But we don't, I don't think we want too wide of streets either. It's got to kind of be that right balance of everything. And because there are going to be quieter times for the place, and there's going to be times where there's more activity there. That theme is consistent with a lot of questions and comments we got in the initial feedback from the regulatory staff of the county as well. So it's very much front of our minds about taking that to the next level in our thinking, and we'll be able to report back to you, I think, more in that respect. But again, the thought is very well understood. I didn't identify, so I should have, the signal controls, and maybe if you could throw up the graphic of, just of our development plan, or maybe the one below on 1918 there would work just fine. There are proffered traffic signals to be implemented by the Spectrum development along Fountain Drive at each of streets DB and Bowman Town, right? So kind of along that spine, and the signals, and we would kind of carry that forward so that if a signal is warranted at the time the development occurs in those places, it would be installed. As I'm sure you know, we can't just pick when a signal goes in. They have to meet very specific criteria of the state to be approved. Otherwise, there's the anticipation is for stop controlled intersections throughout there. What I wanted to, you mentioned the dog dynamic and the sport field. I may have spoken too quickly over block 7 at the bottom left of the plan. There is the one identified for a future athletic field. So it's programmed for a U13 sized soccer field and all of the kind of pieces that go along with that. And we have also considered, a more robust buffering kind of streetscape condition along Barron Cameron, consistent with what you were identifying. I don't think 40 or 50 feet will be what we come back with, but a more robust, buffer to the bigger street there, something that we're aware of as well. So again, I'm not trying to respond to everything you said. I got it all down here, but those are a couple just quick reactions to throw out there for our identification.
Fantastic, thank you.
Mike B, do you have anything?
So I have a question for you. And again, echoing a lot of the same sentiments here. It looks great. I'm excited about it in the future. But my question was relating to the stormwater management improvements that we're planning as they relate to all this. Obviously, we're not at a place where we're talking about materials and specifics, but are we looking to capture a lot of this by way of bioretention areas and the tree pits lining these streetscape improvements? Is that kind of that look to be the goal here? Most of these new streetscape build outs, we're going to include those. And I guess my question kind of hinges on that with were you planning on any stormwater management like ponds or, retention ponds that were going to be, formed as a result of any of the grading operations that were going to happen out here? And hopefully that, obviously we got some work yet, right, before we get there, but I was just curious because looking through the stormwater drawings, it wasn't immediately apparent to me and maybe I missed it. No,
yeah. Well, I will readily admit those stormwater drawings are not readily apparent to me either, but but Pete Crawford is the engineer who is here. If I don't do a good job answering that question, give him the floor. But the answer is we don't anticipate any new retention ponds in the project. I think Susan identified there's a stormwater feature and bioretention feature in the northwest corner of the central green at the lower spot there to pick up, and that we intend to make a design feature to the extent we can. The water will drain to the existing pond there across the street on adjacent to parcels 3F, but that pond is not sufficient to handle all of the current requirements, of course, of the project. So there will be a very robust system of the low impact development features that you were talking about in the streetscape and otherwise, and then most definitely a system of stormwater detention vaults too, underground.
Okay. Obviously there's a lot of details yet to be worked out. So I was just curious, and obviously some of those are going to come to further clarity as you guys work through some of the material choices. I was curious if any of the smaller streets, if you guys had looked at permeable pavement, say, for some of the, again, low speed, smaller connective streets there, maybe that was an option for you in the future. Again, material choices to be made, right? So I was curious to see how far we had flushed that one out. Again, I had a couple other questions for you all, but again, they're relative to, I think Brian had touched on it earlier, some of the choices for what I assume will be retaining walls and things of that nature. But at this point, looks great. I'm excited about the future. So thank you. I appreciate it. Over to you there, Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mike B. Camelia, you have anything?
Yes, thank you. This is my first time seeing all of this, so it's very, very compelling, very interesting, very exciting. I just had a question about, in terms of phases of construction, what is the plan? I mean, is the central green going to be the first step? I mean, how are you guys going to go block by block in constructing everything and just ensuring that if the central green is already up, making sure that debris is not affecting the natural green that you guys have worked so hard to cultivate in the center of it all?
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is that the block 3 would be the first of the blocks to develop with a new building, and that would be the library. And that in connection with constructing, as I mentioned earlier, whichever block goes first, north of Bowmantown, so everything within blocks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 would build the central green, would frame the central green at that point in time, and the necessary portions of the street grid to drive around it. And so again, our plan, our best thinking now is that and we're fairly confident in this, that the library will be the first phase, with the shelter and likely the relocation of the Health and Human Services building to follow. So that means blocks 3 and 5, kind of 3 first and 5 right along with it, and maybe simultaneously. So those would build the street infrastructure around them and bring the central green into place. But we would not anticipate the improvements going into the central green, the expensive improvements as you're meaning, right? Because the improvements that we don't want to upset with ongoing construction until those are complete, those phases are complete, so that we're again not disrupting what we've just put in. We also recognize, and I say this very plainly, right, that there's a near term, we are moving as fast as we can through this process at this point, because we've been at it for a very long time, and we want to advance the ability to deliver the library, the shelter, the relocated Health and Human Services building. There are other blocks here that may be a while before they develop, right? The Sunrise on the Inova Sunrise facility, which is on block 6, there's not an immediate need or to tear that down and build something else. So that could be there for a while. So we're not going to suggest that the improvements to Central Green wait until everything is in, because that could be a longer time than anyone wants to wait for them. But we do want to get to a place through that initial couple rounds of construction, and then install the higher level improvements in the green, and then the later phases we're gonna have to take care not to disrupt them.
And then you mentioned, Inova Sunrise might not be ready to renovate. I mean, is that up to them, I'm assuming, if they want to, have a new building?
Yeah, I mean, and we have planned this and are planning it in a way that those those elements can remain while the rest of this occurs around it. The big, as you can imagine, going back 10 years ago, there was a building right in the middle of where the Central Green is planned, right? And so, you know, time has a way of turning old buildings into problems, and that building is now gone. But the other buildings don't, you know, don't share that. You can develop the library and the shelter without and leave the Sunrise in place for some period of time. And you know, it becomes a bit of the crystal ball gets tough the further out we look. And so, you know, I'm cautious, and you can probably hear me kind of catching myself at the commitment toward explaining what's going to happen exactly when. I've been doing this too long that circumstances change. And if I tell you it'll be 10 years before Block 6 develops, next thing I know, there'll be a new idea for advancing that, you know, or vice versa. So we've planned it in a way that allows those things to take their own course.
And then, sorry, just a couple more questions. I'm assuming, like as my, you know, fellow board members have mentioned, that down the line we will get more details on how the buildings and structures are actually going to look. I see you nodding your head, so I'm sure that's
Yes.
coming into plan. And then in terms of the Central Green, just a couple questions on accessibility for people with disabilities. I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be there's going to be ramps that I don't know. I can't even tell from the you know drawings, but are there any steps involved? Like someone mentioned earlier, like an amphitheater. Like how is that going to look?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that. So there are steps in a couple locations at the upper end, but there are either sloped walkways for the most part, or possibly ramps in a couple of situations, so that everything is fully connected. And the primary walkway around that central lawn space itself is fully accessible at 5% or less, so that it won't even need handrails around that main lawn area. So we tried really hard to provide full connectivity throughout the park with minimum alternate routes that might be needed, which is quite a lot considering we've got about 22 feet of grade change across the site. In terms of that idea of an amphitheater, it's not a true amphitheater that would have seat walls or steps through the middle of it. We're really just talking about sort of a bowl-shaped lawn where people could put out camp chairs or picnic blankets or things like that for watching a performance down on the plaza space. So there wouldn't be those kinds of barriers in the lawn itself. Then once you get down to the plaza area, that would be graded at less than 2% or a maximum of 2%. So that would be fully accessible for access, wheelchair access, as well as having ADA accessible seating area down there. Does that help answer your question?
That's really helpful. And then, I mean, if it is going to be an outdoor space, do you guys plan on having like public restrooms around it, or
yes? Yes, there's a building in the central space. It's hard to see in this view, but it's kind of between the plaza area and the playground that would have restroom facilities.
And then ultimately, who's going to manage like the green? Like who is going to maintain that it always looks neat and it's not unkempt or what have you?
That's an excellent question that we do not have an answer for right now. It's a conversation that is very much front and center in a lot of people's minds, and we're working toward that. But it is likely a bigger undertaking, right, than would be supportable by this small community. So we will likely be in a conversation with with whatever entity from Fairfax County or otherwise that might own that and have a different and more robust funding mechanism for that. It could be that we have a conversation. We have had initial conversations about, is that something that RA would be interested in contracting for the management of, or that sort of thing. I mean, obviously RA does a good job of undertaking the management of its own facilities and that kind of thing. I'm not at all suggesting that's an answer. And if anybody hates that idea, please, I didn't suggest it. It's just in the spirit of it's a very good question that we don't, have an answer to, and we're thinking as broadly as we can about the best way to solve that.
Okay. Well, that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good question because that was one of my questions because, private versus public kind of has some major implications for, trespassing and other items, which, is very important on the site just from the history of it over the time from it, being vacant. And, ultimately we're trying to provide better services for everybody, which is great. I think the challenge is we're going to have a bunch of different spaces that are all going to come to this one, and it's like who really owns it. I think is going to be a tricky thing because there's going to be a lot of vegetation from what I'm looking at here that's going to need a lot of maintenance. I mean, because all this green space we're looking at is assumed to be grass. You're not proposing artificial surfaces or anything like that. I know we touched on there's no material specified yet, but
Correct. Yes, at this time we're envisioning it would all be real grass.
okay. Yeah, because just as an example, I mean, you look at RTC, their amphitheater area, I mean, the grass basically, it gets mauled by dogs and it's, all dead most of the time. And then they try to replant it and then it all dies again. And it's just, it's a whole thing. So, especially with all the residences that are going to be around here, people are going to have pets. I don't know. We need to, I think it just needs to be thought through. From the design standpoint, I think most of it is solid. I'm concerned about the space that, we took up basically 30% of the site for a playground that we envision to be a service to the school, or is it a public playground?
It would be public. We would leave it up to Fairfax County Schools whether they would potentially also use it, but the intent is that it's fully public, so open to residents and any visitors.
But then we inherently think that potentially there's a school being built on block, 1. I think I have my blocks correct.
That's right.
That then potentially might need a whole nother playground, which seems kind of, I don't know. I feel like that block is a little small for a school anyway. So maybe someone can touch on that aspect from block 1 fitting a school. Has there actually been any study with buses and drop off and everything that, a school needs, loading space, etc.? I mean, that block seems awfully small.
I did see Eric. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I got unmuted now. Sorry. Thanks. I muted myself and then I got stuck because I couldn't unmute. So we have been in discussions with Fairfax County Public Schools, and they are approaching this site as an urban school. And so they have urban guidelines that they've been developing. I haven't seen the final version of them, but I believe it's Bailey's Crossroads, they have a school there that is sort of a more urban approach. It's multi-level school versus a single-story school. They have minimums, which this block 1 was the only one that met their acreage minimum. And so the intent is that it is a higher density building, but still reserves their own playground. So there will be a playground on their school. They don't like and wouldn't want to cross the street for for their students during the daytime. And so the intent is that block 1 is a self-sustaining block for the school. We have looked on our own at sort of bus turning in and out as we were doing some real basic level master planning to understand how they come in and out, which would be sort of a into a parking and then looping back out. And as we looked at that, it met their basic requirements for bus auto turn and things like that. As far as the Central Green playground, the concept is that it is more of an artistic kind of playground where the elements are a little bit more destination-like rather than your standard public school playground. So we would try to create something that is not only playful but artistic in its in its element.
Okay. Yeah, I struggle to envision that site as a school. Just with the 12-foot, wide drive aisles, and I know you're saying that there's going to be potentially on-site kind of surface parking that essentially would have a bus loop or something to that effect. I mean, that's going to take up most of the site. And to Emily's point, to where we're getting really close to Bear and Cameron, I don't know if Reston, to me, we don't qualify to be an urban school location. It just seems not like a good answer for that site. And maybe it goes to a different block. I don't know, but it just doesn't, to me, it seems like we're fitting a circle into or a square into a round hole just because someone wants to check a box for a school site. But I think once they actually start looking at it, it's sure with the topography there on that site, with all of I don't know. It just seems very tight. That's my one initial kind of thought. The other question was the stormwater management on the central green. It's taking up space. Is it absolutely necessary to locate on the central green? It's not really going to be usable space. Is that the only location that we can put that?
It's the lowest location within the central green area. And if we are working to capture and deal with the runoff in the central green and some of those surrounding streets, potentially, that's the location for it. As mentioned, we're trying to make it a landscaped experience, sort of a garden experience. So it's not going to be your typical dry retention pond that's totally bare. We really want that to be part of that landscape experience enveloping around the central green.
And just to add in a couple of things, one is that's not the only stormwater management facility on the project. That's one of many. There is bioretention incorporated into the streetscape. So adjacent to the drive aisles, there's bioretention. That's just one of the locations. There's a pretty robust stormwater management goal for this project. And so every location that's possible for stormwater management facilities is being explored. And that's why this is one of them that is proposed. And it's a great spot for it. As Susan said, it's the low point of the central green. It's going to be utilized more of something to look at, maybe educational. And so again, that's why it's there. There's going to be facilities all over this site, in the central green, outside of the central green. And that's just one of many.
Okay. So one thing, so I think I'm the only board member that's been here since 2018, 19, when I've seen this before. One thing that I know I asked for then, and I think it maybe was I don't know if it was misunderstood or, and it goes back to Samantha's comments, some general kind of, I think what people need to understand, the topography of the site. I mean, it probably drops 60 feet from library all the way over to whatever, Town Center Parkway, right? And showing a true section with massing examples of these buildings, I just still think is going to be so important. And are there going to be any stepping requirements? I see that there's now a 4 to 12-foot setback kind of for buildings surrounding the central green, but can they go max height? Can they go the max 180 feet? On block 4, as an example, only 12 foot back from the sidewalk, or are they going to be required to step? If you think of like the Signature building that's across that was developed by Boston Properties, they kind of have a long the roadway kind of a 6-story step, and then it goes up to 20, 22 stories or whatever it is. That to me is successful. So having different massing studies or ways that we're gonna make sure that this green isn't then just walled in on, like she was saying, on the right hand side. Block 2, 4, and 6 have very tall maximums right now, which I don't think that they're outlandish because they're very similar to what's at Reston Town Center now. I think Signature Building is a great example of I think that was like a 4-acre parking lot before, 4.5-acre parking lot, and I think they did a very good job at kind of developing it and infilling it without making that building be a nuisance, basically. Um, so I think having some of those massing and some stepping requirements, depending on the street and where they're facing, I think would be very important for us, at least for me, to see before sort of an approval from a massing standpoint, because I think it's going to be paramount to kind of preserve this central green without having a 180-foot building 37 feet away. If you add up all the kind of setbacks that might be required from that kind of right edge of the central green, it might be nicer to have a much more stepped building. The the parking, I think, is going to be the biggest issue for all of these blocks. And right now this whole site is parked very surface parked. The town center solves it with a bunch of garages that are kind of around the perimeter. This doesn't sound like that's going to be a solution here. The idea, I guess, is going to be every block is going to park itself. And with some of these densities that you're talking about, I mean, is the idea that a lot of these are going to be subterranean parking, or the heights kind of allowing for 4 or 5 levels above grade parking and then buildings on top of them? And how are we going to screen that parking? I think is going to be a big design challenge. But is that kind of what you guys are envisioning for
Yeah, I
the
think that
E2, 4, and 6?
for 2, 4, and 6, yeah, and that if it's above grade, that it would be screened in a way that inappropriately, especially from Library Street, and the main the primary streets there. Again, it's an element that we'll have to address, in the next phases of these, and I think, again, to be very clear, the approval of this application, again, which, again, we appreciate the conversation tonight. We have a lot of good comments, and we're happy to work on those as we work through many other comments. And this thing, the details of this will shift around here before we're ready to seek the next level of approval and come back and see you again. But the eventual approval of what we're putting forth in this stage of the processing of these applications is only going to enable the development of the infrastructure that we're talking about now, and a request to build within one of these blocks is going to require a different application. It's going to require coming back through a process where we're able to show you those kind of details and have those conversations. But totally expected type of comment, right? And it's a type of comment that is that we expect from anybody, because it's very reasonable. How are you dealing with the parking? And we don't want to look at massive parking garages from the primary street thoroughfares.
And then my final question, and even though I had been around, from when this originally was talked about, the tree save areas, can you guys remind me? I don't think there's anything special about those specific locations. I forget, was there a full tree study done that then these were like the most deemed worthy trees, basically? I honestly don't remember.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is right. Yeah, we had done a tree survey. The years escaping me, I'm going to say 2018, something like that, of every tree out there, and to identify, because one of the initial sets of comments was, there are wooded areas. Where are the best trees? And while we were, consistent with the theme of, we're trying to gain approval for the lot and block plan and the central green so that we can frame these blocks and go forward. And, you know, the exception to that is there's a few places within the blocks where we're able to commit to tree save, and it does. I grant you, it looks kind of odd, like why in the world is those particular things just but that's really what it was. And here it is. Yeah, the tree survey informed where the best areas of tree save were, and those were them. And you know, as the blocks come in, there's nothing to say that you know that we're not going to look at tree save again, right? If there are other opportunities with the development of blocks, we'll consider that as well.
Well, and that's kind of where my question was, is like, does that mean all the other blocks, basically the developer can just come in and clear cut everything and start new? If we kind of approve it this way, are they going to have no, I guess, the county, I guess, is going to have its own canopy coverage back that's going to be required, I assume, for sites, I guess when you do development site, right, they're going to require a certain number of tree canopy that's preserved or reinstated with new stuff. That is still kind of anticipated, or those are kind of like proffers you're still talking about, basically, or those have been decided.
No. So yeah, so I think I'm answering your question directly. And if I'm not, ask it again. I'll make sure I do. As I described earlier, what we wanted to be sure we're doing with this application is we've identified the tree save on this application that meets all of the, and again, it's not tree save only. It's a combination of preservation of existing trees and commitment to planting new trees that meets the county's regulatory requirements for, a 10-year tree canopy. And so we've done that with the application in front of you. That does not require me to then tell you, hey, we can't meet the minimum standards. Just trust me, though, someday I'll come in and show you how we're going to meet the minimum standards when I show you the rest of the blocks. Right? What we're saying now is the application before you meets all those standards. So when we come in later and discuss the development within the blocks, the open space that is generated as a matter of proper site design is all going to be, and what if there's additional tree save at that time is going to be additional to the minimum that's required. So it said differently, perhaps when we come in and just pick any of the blocks as an example, not meaning to single anyone out, block 6 comes in and it will propose a building footprint and a massing and all of those things, and there will be a discussion about, is the open space pocket there at the corner in the right place, in the right, and we'll go through all of those, processes at that time. If it's on blocks 4, I can imagine, the conversation is, well, we reserved the tree save here in this initial application so that we knew going forward that we will have met the minimum requirement. Can the block 4 design evolve in a way that tree save area could be bigger, and it could the line increase or that kind of thing. So again, setting up a dynamic where the requirements are met here, so that we're not left having to try to promise something to come that we can't tell you when it's going to deliver, but knowing that when we do come back for design for the projects going on within those blocks, that we're going to have a design conversation about the open space and those various elements within the blocks.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that answers it better, for sure. I think also that'll be kind of then where there'll be, potentially our guidelines, let's call them, as well, that may require, more landscaping. May not necessarily be trees, but there may be, different, whatever landscaping, or because I can't imagine that you guys want to not have any other, sort of vegetation on these blocks. I mean, it won't make for an attractive,
exactly,
by building anyhow. Every building, as an example, usually they will, integrate landscaping to help the aesthetics of the property. Once again, I'm not harping on the Signature, but if you look back at the Signature building, once again with Boston Properties, they added an element of landscaping as well, even on their roof deck, as well. So there's different things I foresee is coming, basically. So for tonight, does anyone else have any other comments, questions that they want to ask the team here?
Oh, my Michael, sorry, I had one more question. Staff, if you could go to page 16 on the application. So if you look at the legend and look at number 9, it says something about a potential swim area. What is
Stormwater management.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
You could try to swim in it.
Yeah, no, I'll pass, but
We
thanks.
hope you won't. Yeah.
And then sorry,
anyone
my
else?
other question was, is this new public school, is this supposed to be like a brand new school, or are they going to use an existing school and move it to this area?
So trying to speak for Fairfax County Public Schools, they've done their survey, let's say their programming, their survey for the future and their projections, and there is a potential need that they've identified, and they wanted it in the comprehensive plan in this location. So we have reserved block 1 for that. As far as an immediate need, there is not. It's down the road. I have to go back a couple years and since they quoted me, but I believe it's like a 15 or 20 year projection. But the need is generated by the development that's built. And that's not just within our development, it's including Spectrum and all of the other plans that have not been executed yet. But they are, trying to plan within that calculation. So they have a calculation on that. So it's not an immediate need at this point, if that's your question.
Yeah.
Yeah, remind me, what's that building on block 1 now? It's a Fairfax County building, right?
It's the Health and Human Services building. That's the one that will be building a new one on block 5 before we can remove the existing one.
Right. Okay. Okay. All right. Anyone else have any other questions? All right. I don't hear any other questions. Yeah, I mean, I think I appreciate you guys coming. I don't see any reason for a motion of in concept or an approval in my sense, because I know obviously we're still working. I think you guys got some feedback from us. I think you guys have some, actionable things that you guys can provide, and I think you're in the right direction for sure. But does anyone else have anything to add? All right. Well, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Thank all of you. We do appreciate it. Again, like I said, we're gathering feedback from multiple places right now, and we will advance further. We do appreciate all of the comments and I think it seems like we're in a place, and just correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know the process as well maybe as I should, that as we advance this, we'll just be back in touch when we're ready to come back and share an update with you and talk at that point in time about a conceptual approval going forward.
Yeah, and I think eventually, you'll basically I think because we are kind of built on kind of the central green, I foresee that you guys could come in and ask for approval for the central green, kind of specifically, and the surrounding kind of green space once we start seeing some of the block kind of massing, let's call it, right? Or maybe just like preliminary block massing, but I think you could ask for, kind of approval of that central green. Obviously we'd love to have it with, if you guys are farther along on block 3 and we start to know how those blocks communicate together, it'd be great to, see that together, but it's not absolutely necessary. I just want to make sure that I think really once we start looking at blocks and massing and how buildings fit, I think it'll definitely help us feel better as a board to confirm that, hey, this central green is good. It's serving what's needed. It's meeting some of our requirements, and then we can also start seeing potentially where maybe some additional open space shows on these other blocks as an example, just or stormwater management or whatever, what we talked about. So I think you could ask for, that approval, or you can keep kind of kicking the can down as you guys get more beefy with just kind of in concepts that basically kind of keep giving you the go ahead to keep rolling, that we're comfortable. But I foresee eventually you guys are going to want something finally approved and just keep getting in concept.
Yeah, well, I guess, and the thing, I guess, do we, and what level of detail, for instance, for the Central Green, would you expect for final approval, right?
We need all the materials, light locations, benches, trash cans, the full topography change, any other, this restroom building, what does that look like? What's the design of that? The final playground selections. Is there a fence around the playground? Is there not a fence? All the final planting plan, et cetera. We would need that robust of a detail to give you an approval.
Yeah. So and again, we can continue the conversation. I think that may be a level of detail that comes, in our site planning of the project, not at the zoning stage we're at. So we may be in a place to, eventually again seek another an advanced conceptual approval, if you will, so that we have, again, we're trying to build, step by step toward this to make sure we're aligned, and then we would come back with the final, design and that kind of detail for a final approval, again, down the road.
Yeah, so I think to get that next in concept, then, if I'm hearing correctly, I would say we just need a little bit, we would need a little bit more than what we've seen.
Yeah.
Put a plant to what some of these, green circles are, put a plant schedule together as an example, would start confirming, where's grass, what pavements, material, kind of high level stuff. It doesn't need to be super detailed, but just something that starts giving us a little bit more clarification on this. And then the streets, you guys already have the end concept. I mean, you haven't really changed those. So
Correct.
in regards to that, it's kind of already, kind of approved in concept. You guys can keep proceeding. I think for that, though, to get any sort of further approval, I really got to see, kind of massing and what requirements are going to be from a setback or a stepping of buildings or not. Whatever you guys want to propose, it's up to you. But I think we're going to definitely need to see that to start understanding the massing of how these blocks are going to interact with the street.
All right, well, it's very helpful. Again, we appreciate everybody's time this evening, and it's a big project. It takes a while to go through, and we appreciate you hanging in there with us.
Don't come back in another 4 years.
Yeah.
Keep it rolling. I won't be around in 4 years. I'm gonna get termed out. So I want to see it. I want to see it go. So.
Listen, we share the sentiment, believe me. We've been too long.
I'm shocked Dave wasn't here. I'm sure he's probably retired now.
I don't know. He's still on
He's
it.
here.
All right. Sounds good, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right, Cam, do we have anything else? LaShonda, do we have anything else we need to talk about tonight?
We don't have anything specific, but just one item. God's Day is currently in process to submit for an interview to the board for the design professional open position. She was on the call. She is on the call tonight. So we're happy to make sure that those connections are made. Thank you, God's Day, for joining us tonight while you're overseas. She's probably in another time zone, but she is here to listen to the meeting, and hopefully things move smoothly with her interviewing with the board in August, I believe. I think we unmuted her, so if you have anything that you'd like to say, God's Day, please let us know.
Thank you, everybody. I listened to the whole presentation today, the panel meeting. Michael, we haven't met. I've talked to one of the members over the phone. I've been in contact with Kim and LaShonda. I'm an architect of over 30 years of experience in the area. I live in Reston. I do not work in Reston. My workplace is in Alexandria. Primary work, 95% of my work is in DC. I'm very much familiar with anything BZA, any presentations made to ANC. I'm currently making several, applications to different design review boards and historic committee meetings or HPRBs in the area. I have not, done a project in Reston, but I do live in Reston for over, since 2010. So familiar with Reston pretty much. Wharf Cluster, primarily. That's where I live, in the South Lakes area. Any questions that you might have for me and this process? I'm here to answer.
Great. Thank you for joining. Hopefully it's not Europe that you're in and it's 3 a.m.
Well, it is 3:38, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining. And yeah, sorry we haven't been able to connect yet, but it definitely sounds like you have the qualifications and the know-how, and with more of these urban we have a couple of these urban infill sites, let's call it, and we are working on trying to robusting our kind of urban infill guideline, because right now I think it has about 4 sentences on it. And so specifically, I know Alexandria has some good infill guidelines. It sounds like you do work in DC, but I think you definitely could be a good fit for kind of obviously volunteering on the board, and then also kind of helping us look at some of those updates that we desperately need as developers are going to be coming in with proposals for these sites. So.
Well, happy to help. I haven't been on this side, on your side, of the process at all. I've always been the applicant and the architect presenting to the boards. So it is interesting for me to kind of see how you look at things and the questions that you come up with, as opposed to the design process that's going on. So it'll be a transition for me, probably a little bit, but I'm sure I can catch up pretty quickly.
Awesome. Thank you for joining.
All right.
Anyone else have any questions?
Thank you.
Have a good night, Gazde. So a couple of other items. Camelia will be going on a leave of absence. This is her last meeting for the remainder of the year. So you're down to 5 after tonight, until the board appoints 3 new members, and so hopefully Gazde is one of them. But most certainly, we will ask for everyone's indulgence as we go through and kind of rearrange some things. We're basically down to 1 panel plus 1 member. So if anyone has the opportunity to volunteer, you will probably start to see a little bit more applications on con as well as on panels for the foreseeable future. So please forgive us in advance of your meetings being maybe a little bit more, but we do want to make sure that members, as you all know, the summer season is the high season for applications. So we are trying to make sure that we make those accommodations as much as we possibly can. So if anyone has the opportunity or availability to volunteer for another panel in addition to your own dedicated panel, it would be much, much, much appreciated. And LaShonda and the team will send out some emails. We are reaching out to past DRB members to see if quorum can be met for panels. And so if we have the opportunity, we'll make sure that those things are happening simultaneously. But in the meantime, we are definitely asking for some support from the current DRB members to attend other panel meetings if possible. That's it, Michael.
And it sounds like if we are able to get people to volunteer for those other panels, it'll make our own panels be shorter.
Exactly.
So theoretically, I mean, our panels have already been 2.5, 3 hours lately, but hopefully that's just because of some of the load that we've had lately. But okay, so keep that in mind, everybody. Obviously be on the lookout for anybody to want to add. Thank you for joining tonight. Great commentary tonight. So I appreciate everybody. Thank you, staff, as always. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
There's a second here. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? All right, motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Camelia. Appreciate it. Good luck on mat leave.
Thank you,
Hope the
guys.
baby comes healthy, and
Thank you, everyone.
I have multiple nieces and nephews coming right now as well. So
Oh, exciting.
just had a
Awesome.
niece born a couple days ago and a nephew coming in the next couple weeks. So
Lots of cousins.
exactly. All
Awesome.
right. See you guys.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.